Brothers and sisters, what's up? This is the In My Grow Show, the podcast dedicated to taking the mystery out of cannabis. As always, I'm Alex. Before I get too far into the show, I want to thank all the musicians that let me use their music to help me put this show together, because it'd be really hard for me to do 30 shows without them. But yeah, can you believe it? This is show number 30. And I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time to listen to me for 30 shows. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. You know, because that first show, I had no idea what I was doing. Right now I have a better idea of what I'm doing. But there's always room to improve. You know, I'm always looking for ways to give better content. I know I have to be more comfortable interviewing people. But like anything, that comes with practice, time. So last show when I was talking to Dr. Behrman, about 30 minutes into the conversation, construction starts to go on right outside of his window. Now I was thinking about editing it out, but I really liked what the doctor was saying at that point, so I just left it in. I understand if some of you just turned it off. That's cool, I get it. I want to thank those of you who didn't, who just sat through it and listened to the whole thing, because he really was giving us some good information. Alright, so let's get on to the strain of the week. Today I want to talk about Blue Dream. Blue Dream is a sativa dominant hybrid, and it's a cross between a blueberry indica and a sativa haze. Now I like to medicate with Blue Dream. What I mean by that is that if I want to party and get high, I don't grab the Blue Dream. It doesn't really do that much for me in that sense. When it's grown right, it'll have a CBD of about 2%, 2 to 5%. And that's pretty high for a strain. And that high CBD level is going to help me from getting too high. Because even though the Blue Dream, when it's grown right, it'll have a 17 to 19, 20% THC, which is pretty high. Because of that high CBD level, I don't really feel it too much. So I don't party with the Blue Dream. I use it for pain management. And because it's a sativa with a high CBD count, I'm able to stay focused and not feel sluggish, and at the same time not be too high to function. And Blue Dream's one of those strains I recommend to people who are new to cannabis, because it's a nice even high. It's not gonna creep up on you suddenly or hit you like a train. All of a sudden you're just really high and you know it's hard to back off of it. In my opinion, that doesn't happen very much with Blue Dream, so it's one of the few ones that I suggest to people who are new to cannabis, because, you know, I don't want to suggest something that's going to be really potent and just scare people away from it. So my recommendation for Blue Dream, great for pain, great if you're new to cannabis. If you want to party on a Friday night or a long weekend like this weekend is, I'd go with something else with less CBD. And that's the strain of the week. So if you follow me on social media, I posted a picture up of me holding what looks like a handful of long grain rice. That is not what that is. That's a handful of maggots. I went down to Rincon-Vitova, which is an insectary here in Southern California. They're literally right off Highway 33. I mean, you can see the highway from the back of their property. So they were nice enough to want to come on the show and talk about biological predators and invited me down to come to see their operation. We had an awesome conversation that I'll play later. And I'm glad I decided not to wear sandals that day. I still wore shorts. Usually I'm walking around in shorts and sandals. But I decided, well, it's an insectary, I at least should put on some shoes, which is a good thing. Because some of those maggots fell, and if they would have fallen between my toes, I would have been doing some kind of funky get it off me dance. Because while it was really cool to hold a handful of maggots, and I learned a lot from Ron, who was showing me around, I still couldn't shake the feeling all day long that things were crawling on me. Any little thing I felt, I was all, get it off me. If you want to see that picture of me holding a handful of maggots, just find me on Instagram at InMyGrow. So that conversation with them will be a little bit later. But first, it's time for, that's right, the report from the Cannabis Front Line. In Illinois, Governor Bruce Rauner signed an industrial hemp bill into law, and he also signed legislation allowing people prescribed with opioids to use medical cannabis instead. I think that is an awesome thing to do, because I feel like it's going to help people understand that we can use less opioids with cannabis, or cut out opioids together and just use cannabis for pain management. So good on you, Governor Rauner. Now in Delaware, Governor John Carney signed legislation to expunge some marijuana convictions, as well as a bill to expand the state's medical marijuana program. Thank you, Governor Carney. The people of Delaware appreciate it. Now, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory, House Bill 20-178 would end cannabis prohibition for adults over 21 and create a system of taxed and regulated sales. It would also allow medical marijuana and industrial hemp. The bill was already approved by the House earlier this month. Here's an update. On August 30th, HB 20-178 was unanimously passed by the Senate. The bill now awaits action from Governor Ralph Torres. Come on, Rafa, let's do something, man. Sign that thing. Because I don't need a passport to go to the Northern Marianas. I just need to get on a plane and go vacation. And you can have my tourism dollars gladly. But let's get that signed, Governor Torres. A little more locally, the Dayton, Ohio City Commission voted to place an advisory question on the November ballot asking voters if they support decriminalization. I think you should take it a little step further and just go ahead and legalize it, because decriminalization, you're still putting people in the legal system over marijuana. Let me know what you think. Email me at inmygrow@gmail.com. Now, in Ashland, Wisconsin, City Council approved a resolution calling on state lawmakers to legalize marijuana and medical cannabis. Good on you, Ashland, Wisconsin. And that was a report from the Cannabis Frontline for today. Now, I got that information off the NORML website. That is normal.org. Go over there, get educated, and become a member. They've been cannabis warriors for a long time. Now, brothers and sisters, coming up is that conversation with Ron Whitehurst and Kyra Ankenbrook. Ooh, Kyra, I hope I got that last name right. And they're from Rincon-Vitova Insectary. Like I said earlier, they were cool enough to invite me down there and record a podcast in their sunroom. Now, sometimes you'll hear a little bit of squeaking. That was me just shifting around in the chair I was sitting in. I didn't know what that was at first when I was listening back to it. And then it came to me. It was me shifting around in a chair because I have a bunch of nervous energy. But I learned a lot from Ron and Kyra, and they gave me a lot of great information about biological predators and a few tips on how to have a healthy grow area. I'm going to take a short break, and then I'll have that conversation with Rincon-Vitova. All right, everybody. I'll be right back. Everyone, like I said, I'm joined by Ron and Kyra from Rincon-Vitova, which is an insectary here in Southern California. And they were nice enough to come in and talk to us and talk to me about some basic biological predatory pest management. So I thank you both for taking the time and welcoming you to the show.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad to have you here at the Bug Farm.
Well, and my first basic question is, for both of you, how do you wind up in an insectary?
I married the manager of the insectary. I was fascinated with biocontrol, and there was this one guy that seemed to have it all together as far as a total ecological approach to pest control, about managing the movement of insects and such. That if you have pests coming into a field from an open chaparral or something like that, just plant a row of flowering plants along that edge. And as the pests start migrating into your crop, then they'll be welcomed by the beneficial insects living amongst the flowers, and they'll invite them to dinner, and they're on the menu. And so at one meeting, his daughter was there. I thought she was kind of cute, and so eventually we started seeing each other and got married, and here I am.
So then truly it's a love story then, Ron, is what is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Well, and it always starts with the girl at some point or another. Kyra, is that right?
Uh-huh.
How did you wind up here?
Google. Yeah, so I was in my last couple of weeks of college and didn't really know what I was going to do except continue working at the butcher shop. And my professor said, you know, there are places in California called insectaries that actually grow insects. So I popped down to the computer lab and typed insectary into Google, and Rincon-Vitova was one of the 5 that came up. And there was actually a job posting closing that very day. So I think it's kind of in the stars that I'm here.
Yeah, I would think so, especially if it was the last day of the posting.
Yeah.
So, and you studied insects in college?
No, more generally, biology and chemistry. Unfortunately, I was told by an advisor that if I studied entomology, I would only be able to work for places like Orkin, pest control companies.
That were spraying pesticides.
Yeah, very
Right.
toxic pest control companies.
Which is generally true, and that's really sad commentary on our culture here.
Mm-hmm.
People putting out this false message, that chemicals are the way of the future. Modern chemical farming, farming with chemicals, like Dow Chemical, a better living through chemistry.
Yep.
That is wrong-headed, and it doesn't actually work. And it's brought us to where we are now with huge areas of the country, and the soil salting out and becoming hard and compacted and not able to grow crops. What's wrong with this picture? So the basic idea that we operate on is let's work with nature. That it seems to make more sense than trying to beat her into submission. That if you work with nature, it's easier, cheaper, and healthier all around.
Oh, I agree. It's real sad that the better living through chemistry paradigm has persisted for this long. And it's even more unfortunate that that's really kind of the advice that you still get at the university level. I mean, you'd think that university is looking into newer and better and exciting ways of doing things, but it's still
the same culture of just chemical sprays.
It is.
It's a paradigm of see a bug, kill a bug.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My whole questions are about integrated pest management, because in my gardens, I'm not trying to eradicate all the bugs. I'm trying to just manage them to a point to where they're not going to take over. Because if I focus on eradication, it just doesn't seem possible, and plus, I just don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
Some of the 3 basic predators out there as far as live biologicals, we either have chewing predators, which I assume are like ladybugs, praying mantises, then piercing predators, which I'm not really sure which ones would be piercing.
The bugs suck.
Okay.
They got a drinking straw proboscis feeding tube that they just poke into another insect and suck their guts out. It's a wonderful way to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, so
let's back up just a little bit. So there's IPM, which means Integrated Pest Management, which looks at integrating all these different components of pest control, mechanical, biological, cultural, and so on. And so we've got the five features of biologically integrated pest management. You want to talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so with the 5 features, it takes into this concept of IPM, integrated pest management, as a program approach, where you're not just thinking see a bug, kill a bug, or see a bug, time to release ladybugs, that kind of a thing, but you think about the life cycle of the insect. So you're out there thinking about monitoring and looking at what's out there, and not only your pests that are out there, but also evidence of parasites and other beneficials that might already be in your garden. And it takes into account trapping. So some of the insects don't really have other insects that want to eat them. So some of the things that you can do are these cultural and mechanical practices of trapping. And then we talk about releasing the beneficials and things like that.
And then as far as biological control, we recognize 4 major components. That there's the predators, that's where an insect will eat multiple of the pests. Like ladybugs will eat, 20 aphids a day or something like that. And then there's the parasites, where a mama wasp or mama fly, whatever, will lay an egg in the host insect, and usually it's just one egg and one insect, so it's one-on-one. for parasites. And then there's pathogens, where there's these bacteria and fungi that make insects sick. They're diseases. So it's like the equivalent of spreading plague amongst the pest insects. And then there's antagonists. And these are things that are just kind of there, taking up space. In the old days, we used to talk about, if somebody's in the phone booth using the phone, you can't go in and use it. Nobody, I think there's a few phone booths in museums now, but there must be a current analogy.
So now, is that because it keeps other things from colonizing the plant?
Yeah,
like there's just no room for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're taking up space. They're taking up resources. And so there's no resources that are freely available to the pest insect to come in, because there's other critters doing it. So as far as the crop goes, they're not feeding on the crop very much. They're not interfering with us. They're not biting us or whatever. They're just kind of there hanging out. And so those are the antagonists, and those are the seem to be a really important part of a pest control program in an ecological perspective. So then we get down to predators, parasites, and stuff.
Right. So then we get down to the predators. Now, also, are there different considerations for different types of grow areas, like indoor grow areas, greenhouses, and sun-grown and outdoors for all of these pests?
Yeah. But I think we should back up just a little bit further and talk about, the first line of defense is a healthy plant. The basic principle of organic farming and gardening is a healthy plant resists pests and disease. So the first thing is to grow a healthy plant. It's said that if you get the bricks of a cannabis plant up to 14, you just don't have any pest or disease problems. And so the first order of business is grow a healthy plant.
Now, bricks is the amount of sugar in the plant, correct?
Bingo.
Okay.
Right. So the general handle is that it's for the sugar content. It's used for measuring the sugar content of ripe fruits, in the grape industry and lots of other places where they're producing fruit. But you basically squeeze the juice out of a leaf, though, and put that on this little device called a refractometer, little optical device. You can get them for about $80 now, and look at the light in the sky, and you see this little line, and that falls where the concentration is. It's actually total dissolved solids, and so basically it means like the thicker the sap, that the healthier the plant is. And so the observation is, when you get the bricks up to a certain level, then you just don't have any problems with pest and disease. So that's the first order of business: grow a healthy plant. Then, when you have the pests and disease, then we look at putting in the beneficials to feed on them, and trying to achieve some kind of balance.
Now, achieving the balance, because in order to keep those beneficials healthy, there has to be a certain number of pests for them to actually eat and live off of.
Right. You can put beneficial insects onto a plant, sitting in the middle of a parking lot. But if you have some habitat around it, and you have some biology, some ecology, then you're going to get a lot more support, for your beneficial insects.
In an indoor area, do we introduce our beneficials when exactly? As soon as we put in our plants?
Yeah.
So anytime you can come to biological control with kind of a preventive mindset instead of waiting for something to happen and be reactive to it, you're going to have a lot better chances of success. So like you mentioned, you're never going to expect eradication from biocontrol. I mean, these little pests are the food for the beneficials. So if there were no pests, there would be no food. You would not have any beneficials. It's a whole cycle. So when you're putting your plants in, ideally you want to start out with some kind of base of insects that are going to be able to help protect with the first wave of insects that come in. Now, depending on what pests you're going to encounter, some of the beneficials that you would augment with wouldn't necessarily be something that could find other things to eat and would need to be there when their pests are there. So it kind of depends, getting into specifics. But when you're starting out a crop, something that's really good to do is start with some successively planted bean plants, bush beans, pole beans, just green beans. and let those come up and produce their nice green leaves. And that's going to be, you can use that as a banker system for your beneficials. So that's going to help draw off a lot of the pests from your cannabis crop over to these more succulent beans. Call them a trap crop.
Oh, wow.
Then you can populate those with some beneficials to kind of keep the little cycle going and introduce beneficials into your garden, that kind of a thing. For a lot of the spider mite problems that happen, one of the things we hear from the producer of this soil mite, Stratiolaelaps, is a lot of the spider mite issues you have August, September, that kind of time frame, is the same level you're going to expect to start with following spring. A lot of these mites drop down and go into red phase and overwinter. So a really good mite to populate this time of year when you start your crop, any old time, is this soil mite called Stratiolaelaps, as they will live down in the first few inches of the topsoil and go after a whole slew of pests that are developing down there, overwintering down there, hatching from down there, and so on.
Wow, that's a good defense to have them just go after them because, yeah, they overwinter under the ground.
That's a really good one to have in your gardens. Something else to start with if you're talking about at planting out and when you're starting your crop is trichogramma, a teeny tiny micro wasp that goes after lepidopteran pests, so moth and butterfly pests. So this is a parasitic wasp. So it's a teeny tiny little wasp that flies around and looks for moth eggs to lay their eggs inside. So the mama wasp lays her egg inside your moth egg, disallowing that moth egg to hatch into the caterpillar. So the earlier you can start that with your crop, especially as soon as you start to see those first rounds of white or yellow moths flying around, that's when you want to get that guy going. So that's a really good one to start with your crop.
So yeah, then there's the three basic situations: a grow room that's in a building and it doesn't have any native soil, and everything's, people attempt to control everything. And then there's the greenhouse where you usually have soil floor, and you've got vents that open up, and so you get some communication with the outside world, insects coming and going. And then there's the field grow or sun grow, where you got ready flow of beneficial insects, coming and going, as well as your pests. And so setting up the different rooms is a bit different, or different situations. It's a bit different, yeah.
Yeah, some insects aren't really appropriate for outdoor use, where they're more appropriate for inside greenhouses, things like that. Some of the insects just can't keep up with the influx of other insects blowing in and around from other farms and your neighbors.
Some of the issues that indoor growers have with beneficials is that releasing them in the daytime, or when the lights are on, I should say, they'll release them and they'll say, well, they fly into the lights.
Yeah.
One of the things I tell them is,
fried, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I tell them is, well, release them overnight in the dark hours, so at least that way they have a few hours to establish and say, oh, well, here's where the pests are, and you may lose some in the next day when the lights come on. So those are just some of the considerations that I try to tell people when they're saying, well, I'm going to release beneficials. It's like, well, make sure if they're going to fly, you're not going to fly them into the lights.
And that would be a big thing for the ladybugs. But for the predator mites, they walk around, and so that wouldn't be an issue. And aphides, they fly at night, the aphid predator midge. And so it depends on the particular insect. So.
Another question that I got is nematodes. I love using nematodes because they really do get those soil-dwelling pests, especially the larvae. But now somebody asked me if you can foliar spray the nematodes. I didn't really know what to tell them because I know they're really sensitive to UV light. I was like, I don't really know how long they'll last. I don't know if they'll... So I didn't know what to tell them. Can you foliar spray your nematodes and have them be effective?
You can. So a lot in the ornamental greenhouses, they do foliar applications for thrips, the flower thrips that get into the buds and do the damage to the flowers before they even open up.
Okay.
So there are definitely people out there doing foliar nematode applications. You are absolutely correct, though. They are very sensitive to UV, so that's something you would want to wait until kind of later afternoon or a cloudy day or early evening to be doing that when you're not going to be subjecting them to the UV.
In a grow room, you would do this, in the dark cycle. Mm-hmm. And in a greenhouse, you would do it at dusk or actually after dark, and in the field, then at dusk or after dark, so that the nematodes were in this water film that you spray on for the longest time before the water evaporates. The nematodes have short legs, and they can just wiggle around in the water film. So once water film dries, then they can't move. So if they've got a couple of hours, ideally 4 to 6 hours, to move around, find the insect, wiggle into the insect, and start feeding on the insect, then once they're inside of the insect, the outside temperatures and humidity don't make any difference then.
All right. So
a nematode by itself is short-lived on the leaf surface, but you can use them for foliar pests. And the big use, of course, is for pests in the root zone, and so they're really good for fungus gnats, shore flies, flea weevils, root aphids, number of other things that you would see on the roots of the plants.
And there are different types of nematodes for different root zones or parts of the soil that they can live in?
There's like 3 main different kinds of nematodes that we have available commercially. One likes to eat fly larvae, like fungus gnat larvae. Some like to eat caterpillars, so they're really good for the worm on the leaves and in the root zone. And then some like to eat beetle grubs, so they're really good for grubs and flea weevils and things like that.
So now, is there anything that we can use if a grower gets some fungus, some PM, some powdery mildew? Excuse me. Is there something that you guys have that we can spray on there? 'Cause especially living on the coast or close to it, a lot of growers, especially outdoors, will start to get that PM, that powdery mildew, just because of the ocean air.
Again, best thing to do is being proactive. You want to talk about
Absolutely.
Right?
Definitely being proactive again. Here's where we get back into the antagonists. So anytime you can start your plant off on the right foot, so to speak, and give it some of these inoculants at the beginning, excuse me, they will have this within their system and be able to kind of ward off the powdery mildew. There is the Defensor product. It's got Bacillus subtilis. So that's the active ingredient that you're looking for to go after powdery mildew, is Bacillus subtilis. If used as a foliar, it will kill the spores. So the spores that are germinating on the leaf surface, it will kill those active spores, but you will still have that white look on the leaves. So aesthetically, that won't go away unless you kind of get in there and scrub it off. There's also a lot of really good research out there that another product, Trichoderma, there are several Trichodermas out there, but together with the Bacillus subtilis, they do really, really well against powdery mildew. So anytime you can incorporate this stuff, especially the Trichoderma, into your planting mix and kind of colonize it in the area and not give this powdery mildew a foothold, you will decrease your chance of getting it. But
so we can put that inside the growing mix, inside the dirt itself?
You can,
Can we combine them both in a foliar spray? Or
Yeah.
it has to?
See why not, yeah.
And you put it on with food. So bacterial food is sugar, dried brewer's yeast, and molasses, and some of these readily available carbs like that. And the brewer's yeast has a lot of protein in it, so it's a good protein supplement or protein food for your bacteria and some of the yeast. And so whenever you spray one of these bacterial products, we encourage people to put it on with food. And so we've got a food mix that we put together. We call it microbe nutrients, and it's got a mixture of dextrose, dried brewer's yeast, and humic acid. The humic acid is really good at for supplying some of the trace elements, and also as a chelating agent to mobilize nutrients. And so when you mix the bacteria or the fungus, I guess the trichoderma is considered a small fungus or something like that. They keep changing these designations about what family things are in. But anyway, so you put it on, mix the bacteria and the food with water, and immediately that bacteria is going to be starting to multiply. And when bacteria multiply, they put out this slime layer, and so they're really good at sticking to the surface of the leaf or to the roots or to the insect or to the fungus, whatever they hit. And so, and they're multiplying rapidly, and so they can very easily overwhelm the disease-causing organisms. And then going back to antagonism, that if you spray the leaves with these beneficial microbes, you can buy them in a jug from us, or you can use compost tea or compost extract, so it can be a home brew basically. That you're colonizing that leaf surface with these beneficial microbes, and so those disease-causing organisms are going to have to fight tooth and nail just to get to the surface of the leaf, through these beneficial microbes. So setting up the stage so that you prevent the infection of the leaves by these disease-causing organisms is your first line of defense, or second after growing a healthy plant, I guess you'd say.
We can order that from you. Do you guys ship everywhere in the country?
Yeah, everywhere in the continental United States.
So as long as it
So
doesn't...
little challenges as far as getting stuff to Hawaii and I guess a little bit to Puerto Rico, and some of the other territories. But anywhere in continental United States, we're good.
And remember, folks, if you order live anything, please have someone there to sign for it, pick it up, put it in the fridge, or put it inside. They're alive for a reason.
They work better that way.
They work better. If it's not there and you're expecting someone to leave, you're expecting the postman to leave it in the middle of winter out in Wisconsin, they're going to freeze and they're going to be dead, and you're just going to have to reorder.
Or you leave it on the front porch in the middle of a heat wave when it's 105 degrees outside. Yeah, we've heard all the horror stories. And we guarantee live delivery. And so we do our best to get the live organisms to people in good condition. And so we ask our customers who are receiving especially the beneficial insects to open up the package, make sure that they're alive and kicking, and if they're not, call us immediately so we can work it out.
Don't open it all the way up.
Well, generally the insects are in little jars or bags or something like that, so that it's easy to open up the package and look inside and verify that they're alive.
So now, can small home growers just buy a small package of biologicals that you guys sell, or
the shipping is going to be the same as for a large package generally, and so we encourage small growers to go together and order as a group, and then you split up the shipping charge, and so it becomes
that makes
nominal.
sense.
And we can also sell in larger quantities, so we can give you a better price break.
And you guys have been...
So we encourage people to work cooperatively. Biocontrol is best on a community basis, and so
Yeah, plus you get to know your
let's
local
build
grower.
biocontrol and community at the same time.
Yeah, help your farm and the farm next to you, and y'all just make sure to keep everything out.
Yeah.
All right, so parasitic predators,
Specific. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
which would be like you were saying, the wasps
Yep.
that lay eggs, and they find a nice little caterpillar flying around. And the caterpillars are usually on the top of the plant because that's just where the moth or the butterfly is going to land.
Right. The exception to that is the cutworms that live in the top inch or two of the soil, or they hide there during the day and they come out and then they do some major damage to your plant. We fairly rarely see cutworm damage on cannabis.
Now, are there any situations where you'd actually have to physically inject biologicals into your plant to get a pest that's inside the stem or the root itself?
I did read there are some stem borers that happen in some of the cannabis plants. And we do have people doing stem injection nematodes for other tree borers. So that is a possibility. We just haven't gotten any calls for any stem borers. That one seems kind of rare as far as the worm pests go.
So generally, it's surface application.
So for spider mites, what is the best defense? Let's say I suddenly find, hey, there's more spider mites than I really want. What's the best thing as far as for an outbreak?
Well, it kind of depends if you're indoor or outdoor. So that's the
Okay.
first question we're going to ask when you call. Is like, are you an indoor grower or an outdoor grower?
All right, let's start indoor.
So indoor, then we're going to ask, what do you keep your temperatures and humidities at? So we've got a list of 7 different predatory mites that we can choose from to get an appropriate predator for your situation. So what it really boils down to often is, what are your temperatures and humidities, so we can fit a predator into your situation. There's a lot of people, Persimilis, that's the predatory mite that everybody seems to know the name of. They have a very narrow range of temperatures and humidities that they work within. So if you've got these ideal, optimal conditions for them, they're going to be a fabulous predator for you. But if you're outside those ranges, they're not going to work very well. So that's really important for indoor grows.
And if you have hot lights, that's going to make a difference as far as creating an atmosphere that's kind of like a desert.
Yep.
And the lights are on.
Hot and dry.
Yep.
That's what they like. Spider mites like hot and dry, so when it gets hotter and drier, they seem to explode.
Yeah,
So we
I have
often
that
tell
issue.
people anything they can do to raise the humidity around their plants will help suppress the spider mites and encourage the predatory mites.
And so just spraying just plain water,
Clean water.
will increase the humidity and decrease the temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, hot and dry, it's good for spider mites. So cooler and wetter, better. So at least especially in the veg stage, where the water is not going to hurt your plants or anything. You just mist your plants daily, a couple times a day. And in greenhouse, we encourage people to set up these misting or fogging systems. And so hot, dry temperatures coming around, you got a heat wave, just turn on the misters to come on a couple of minutes every hour, and has this wonderful fog that increases the humidity, cools down the room, and decreases the competitiveness of the spider mites. And what's the possibility that you're going to have spider mites if you're growing cannabis? It's like, duh, it's like,
Pretty good.
yeah. So an indoor grow or a greenhouse grow, it just really makes sense that as soon as your plants are in there and kind of established, that you inoculate with the appropriate species of the predator mites. So you got them up and growing. Yeah, might have a couple of predator mites that will starve to death, but we'll have a nice funeral for them over here. But for the most part, we like to have this balance in the predator and the prey. But when you're looking at production, let's see if we can eradicate the pest. And so if you do proactive releases, you can bring the pest numbers down to the level so that it's really hard to find the pest. So with the predator mites, you can do that as far as spider mites go. With the Aphidoletes, you can do that with the aphids. And some grows, they're pushing the less soft succulent growth of the plant, so they're really attractive to aphids. And so with a weekly release of the Aphidoletes, the aphid midge, that you can keep the aphids suppressed to low levels, so it's really hard to find them. And so there's these different strategies, looking at the cultural conditions, looking at selecting the right predator, and then getting the right predator in there in a timely manner, so that just when you got your crop established in the greenhouse or in your grow room, get those predators out there. We got these typhoid Marys walking around. These guys that come in the room, that have come in from the outside, that there's these little spider mites hitching a ride on their clothing, and so you're going to have the mites in there no matter how clean you set up your grow room. As long as you have people coming and going, you're going to have an introduction of the pest.
And people also have to remember that if they are going to spray anything on their plants, you have to give it a couple of weeks before you release any biologicals, just because for the same thing, you might wind up killing the biologicals you just released and just spending your money for no reason. Now, what
Do you
kind
want to go with the side effects? Or,
Hopefully, your listeners aren't spraying anything that you have to wait weeks before you release the beneficials.
You know, people panic, and
I know,
as soon as they
I
see
know.
a yellow spot of a mite or anything, and they're like, hey, let's bomb it with everything,
Yep.
and then throw in some live stuff to see what happens. And then next thing you know, why are they all dead? So they're like, well, when did you spray? 2 days ago. So we're like, well,
Yeah.
then, yeah, that was, good for them. You just had a huge mass killing.
So there are two of the competitor companies out there that sell beneficial insects, Copert Biological and BioBest. They have fabulous databases for side effects with some of these harsh chemicals. So if you use your favorite search engine and type in Copert side effects or BioBest side effects, you'll come up with these databases. And you can check off the active ingredient or the trade name, the chemical product, and then you can go to the next tab and check off which beneficial insects you plan to use or you might have already thrown in there. And it'll give you this chart of the level of toxicity and how badly you're going to kill everybody off. And it'll also give you somewhat of a guideline on how long those chemicals will persist, but that part of the database is very conservative. So when you're looking at the persistence, at least double that time frame and you'll be a little bit safer.
So on simple soaps and oils and things like that, just mix up, Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap. Peppermint's a really good repellent for spider mites. Mix up Dr. Bronner's soap, spray it on. Generally, as soon as it's dry on the plant, it's safe to release the beneficial insects. Similarly for horticultural oil, or some people just use vegetable oil. As soon as it's dry on the plant, it's safe for the beneficials to come in. Some of the spice oils do have a bit of a repellent effect against some of the parasites and predators. Things like the rosemary, clove, and cinnamon. Will have a residual effect on the leaf surface that will repel some of the beneficials. Generally, the natural stuff is considerably lower risk for us and for the beneficials in general, but for the short term, some of the spice oils will be repellent for a while. And what was it?
Now, so for spider mites, if you've got them on your outdoor crop, what can someone use for it?
Again, you can inoculate with the appropriate species. Depending upon the temperature and humidity in the neighborhood where you're growing, you can do that. And then, as far as setting up the habitat, you want to have rows of flowering plants, either surrounding your grow outside or interspersed. So, like if you have big trees and pots, you can plant some low-growing flowers and stuff in between the rows of pots outside. And so you're growing. On any flower, you'll be growing the western flower thrips, and those are excellent food for the minute pirate bug, or Aureus is the Latin name for it. And Aureus is a dynamite predator on spider mites and thrips and stuff like that. So just by throwing around a few seeds in the area of your grow in the spring or before your season starts, you'd be able to grow a lot of the beneficials that
To be able to attract them and keep them around.
right.
Wow! Just any kind of wildflower.
Just about any kind. We've got a mix of we've got 12, 14 different mixes, that fit into different niches. You want a low-growing annual one, get this. You want a low-growing perennial one, there's this one, and then we got tall-growing ones and other ones that are tall-growing, and you can also harvest the flowers for cut flowers. And so, what do you want? We got it, So you set it up so that you're attracting the beneficials, and then it's good to release a small inoculative quantities of the particular predator mites that are going to do really well in your situation. For a lot of areas in California here, a mix of Californicus and Longipes or Californicus and Occidentalis. Was there a preference there? Or?
We've been doing a lot of the Californicus and Occidentalis mix, especially when folks have russets or aren't sure if it's a russet situation versus a true spider mite. So, and they're wonderful outdoors, indoors, especially the Californicus can both outdoors and indoors. They're great to think of as a preventive mite because they can find small arthropods and even pollen to exist on while they're looking for.
So will they also attack russet mites?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both of those are good on russet mites.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I think all three of those. Yeah. I'm not that sure about longivies, but
I don't know.
yeah.
Definitely Occidentalis and Californicus
Yeah.
for the russet.
Now, what about root aphid? What's the best predator for the root aphid? Let's say.
Probably the nematodes. It's kind of a parasite, but yeah. So you just drench into the root zone some of the insect-eating nematodes. Let's see. Which is the preferred one? The
SC is the one most people have been using.
SC?
Steinernema carpocapsi. SC. Yeah, much easier.
No, I've looked it up, and it looks like the alphabet just thrown together.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't pronounce that.
Yeah, the Steinernema carpocapsi, SC for short.
Yeah,
It's
now
a
you're
lot
just
easier to
showing
wrap your tongue around. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you can combine that with one of the fungal pathogens like mycotrol. You can do either one by itself or you combine the two together for a double whammy. So the Bavaria bassiana is a fungus that likes to eat insects, but doesn't like to eat you because you're operating at 37 degrees centigrade. You're too hot for you're too hot for them. They don't like you, so don't feel insulted. But and so just mix the nematodes and the fungus with water, drench it into the root zone, and you can dramatically reduce these pests, and then those things will be freely reproducing in the root zone, and it'll help to suppress them for the long term. And that works in grow rooms and greenhouse as well as outdoor.
Those outdoors.
In a greenhouse, a lot of times you'll have those dositrons or something. You can just run it in through the irrigation.
They won't.
Water.
There isn't a certain amount of time that I have to. Because I read somewhere that nematodes will drown if you leave them in the water too long.
Yeah, they will.
Oh.
Yeah. So you need to have a bubbler, like a little air stone, like you use in an aquarium, in the supply tank.
Just to keep the water oxygenated for them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right.
And they tend to settle out, in just plain water, so that they'll tend to go to the bottom of the tank. So an air stone will keep the water oxygenated and moving around a little bit, so they stay suspended. And then you can run that, into your grow beds and take care of the pest. And let's see that you can, in recirculating systems, you can just kind of recirculate for a couple times and then dump it after a couple days. And in the flow-through system, it just goes on out then. Once you introduce it into your grow beds or your rock wool, whatever your substrate is, it will live in the rock wall on the water film, and so it'll continue staying there for a while at least.
Now, I was over on your website, and I really appreciate the index by pest. Because I went over to the index by predator, and the same thing about the alphabet. It was all
who are these guys?
Well, it's not just that, but I was like, I don't know what these things are.
You can't tell the players without a program.
It's two other searches. Now I got to go to Google to look at it. No, that's not what I need. But the index by pest, I know what I need, and right there, and it's a great help because it's just a lot of there isn't a lot of marketing associated with it. It's just some basic information about what's going to work for that pest. Because other searches, there are a lot of rabbit holes.
Oh yeah,
that I've gone down and be like, wait, no, this sounds like literature. You go down and it's just someone's marketing of buy it. So once again, appreciate that index because it's really clear and concise. And the PDF papers also, as far as the bulletins for them, is for what's the latest news on the predators. Because I didn't realize till I started my search that certain predators are seasonal. the praying mantis, I thought just because they were bugs and grown in places that you can just have them all year round, like, yeah, it's just some warm space and some light. So yeah, I appreciate all that work on your guys' website. It's a lot of information. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about that we maybe didn't go over?
We didn't cover caterpillars.
Caterpillars.
So we started with the trichogramma.
That's right.
And then, so you suppress the caterpillars by interrupting them at the egg stage with the trichogramma wasp. And then if you see some of the young caterpillars, the caterpillars will burrow into to the buds and chew on them, and then they'll introduce the fungus. A lot of times the botrytis, the gray mold, which can just totally trash a bud.
Now they introduced that fungus. Is that because of their droppings? Or because they're leaving the leaf open for exposure after they chew it?
Yeah, so they're damaging the leaf, and so the damaged leaf surface and buds and stuff then are open to the fungus that's all over the place anyway. And so if you spray with BT when you see the small caterpillars, then that will reduce the caterpillars then. And so you start with the egg stage, and you got the trichogramma parasite that takes out the caterpillars at the egg stage. If you do a good job with that program, you can reduce the caterpillars by 80%. Then with the BT sprays, you can reduce the caterpillars probably, those by 80% or so, 80-90%. And then larger caterpillars, there's some general predators that can help, like our lacewing, which are a really good general predator. And in outdoor grows, if you have a lot of problems with caterpillars, then there's this really cute little bug called spiny soldier bug. And it's a little bug, and they insert their feeding tube into caterpillars and suck them dry. So it's really amazing seeing like this little tiny bug with its feeding tube in the caterpillar that's like 10 times bigger than them, and the caterpillar's just kind of dangling there, and they're just kind of sucking away at it. You can introduce those, and they'll tend to colonize, and so you can have those around in future years.
Those bugs, do we need? What would be a good thing to plant for those that suck the caterpillars?
Just the general.
Also the same
diversity
kind of
mix, yeah. So a wide range of different kinds of flowers. So we want some flowers from the mint family, the aster family or sunflower family, some of them from the parsley family, and some from a couple of other families that would be useful. And so a mix of different kinds of flower structures. The different flower structures have pollen and nectar available to different sizes and shapes of different insects. And so if you plant a mix, then you got this smorgasbord, that anybody can come there and that they can feed and be happy. And you also have these nice leaves that moths can come along and lay their eggs on, and there'll be little caterpillars there. And so that will be food for the caterpillar feeding insects and for the moth egg feeding insects. So you can tolerate some pests living on there because it's not your crop. So,
sure.
Yeah. But you can also use it as crop plants because the culinary herbs are really good, have really good flowers. So like parsley and dill, fennel, coriander, cilantro are all in the parsley family, and that flower, all those little teeny tiny flowers and kind of like that flat surface there, have really good pollen and nectar for a wide range of things, from the little teeny tiny trichogramma wasp that's 1/100 of an inch long up to the relatively like a Mack truck, like the syrphid fly that is really good predator on aphids. And so having that diversity out there. So the culinary herbs. So and then basil and oregano and rosemary and all those culinary herbs are have these really great flowers that can host these beneficials. So you can have dual function. So in permaculture we like to talk about stacking functions. that if you can do something that will serve 3 or 4, 5, 6 different needs, all the better than something that's just special purpose here.
Oh, that makes sense. So it is a good idea then, regardless of what kind of garden you're running, to have more than just monocropping instead of just having cannabis. Have a
Right.
couple of flowers in there.
Yeah.
It looks nice,
Mm-hmm.
and you get some benefits to it. Quite a few of them.
So if you think about having just one kind of plant there, it's like you're spreading out a banquet for the pests. That an acre of cannabis would be putting out a signal. Hey guys, come on down. We got food for everybody. So you mix it up. It puts off a kind of confusing aroma, and you mix it up. You got all these predators that come down for the flowers, and there's some nice juicy pests to eat over here on the cannabis now. So we can go over there and have some snacks after we get our main meal of nectar or something like that.
The other point to this that kind of really drives it home is that a lot of these insects are predators in maybe one life stage. Maybe the larval stage is the predatory stage of that insect. But when they go through metamorphosis and grow their wings and become this beautiful flying version, they don't eat insects, but they need nectar and pollen to be able to lay eggs and continue the whole life cycle. So if you've got a monocrop and no flowers providing nectar and pollen, a lot of these life cycles are just going to end once they get to that point.
Wow.
They're going to head somewhere else and look for the flowers that they need.
Never thought about that.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about hosting this wide range of different life stages. So like for the complete metamorphosis, you're looking at egg, larva, pupa, and adult. So you want to have, something for everybody.
You want to have them established and actually have them keep going. Right, okay.
Exactly.
Well, that's some great information.
So when you look at all these different details, it can be very complex and very confusing. But you step back and look at the basic principle. Let's work with nature. That's real simple. Set up a natural system and have it be as natural as you can. Even if it's in your closet, or in this greenhouse that's covered with, plastic or glass and, and you got all these fans going, all this other stuff, or an outdoor grow, wherever it is, you're trying to make it as natural as you can, and then once you set this stage as priority of working with nature, then it all is a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and a lot healthier for all of us then.
Yeah, so once you have that ecosystem kind of built, it'll sort of run itself for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless, like me, this summer I kind of stopped paying attention to my gardening sometimes. I looked down and I was like, mites everywhere. So, that makes perfect sense.
Do you have more encouragement as far as working with the biology then?
Call us or email us. It does get complicated, and this might even be breaking some people's brains right now, just what we've talked about. But
so, how do they find you?
We are Rincon-Vitova Insectaries, so www.rinconvitova.com, which is RINCONVITOVA.com.
That's Rincon after Rincon Beach, and Vitova, a contraction of vita ova, live egg from the Latin. The one insectary was growing moth eggs originally for tropical fish food, but that didn't work out. So combined, used the moth eggs as food for lacewing and trichogramma. And then phone number
800-248-2847.
which spells
Bugs.
so.
Are you guys on any
Call
social
bugs
media?
for bugs.
We are. You can find us on Facebook, or Rincon-Vitova. We've got Twitter too.
Yeah, Twitter, and we don't have his Instagram yet. We got some individual Instagram ones. Yeah. And then so phone number, email. Main email box is orderdesk@rinconvitova.com.
I encourage everybody to go to the website and check them out. It's a great resource. Go over to the Index by Pests if you're like me, and figure out what you have if you have an infestation. Or if you just want to inoculate your plants and just have your grow area, your grow room, whatever you're doing, start out healthy.
again, it can be very complicated, but in specific situations, it's real simple. And so call us, we walk you through it, and then it's simple for you.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated if you don't know what you're looking at.
We're here to help.
They'll help you figure it out.
Love talking bugs.
Yep.
Send pictures. If you can't figure what something is, take a nice clear picture of it and email that over.
See, I love living in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can definitely.
The future is now.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, you guys.
We
appreciate the time.
We appreciate you coming and talking to us. So, our mission is to promote biological control by natural enemies, and so you're helping us do that. So we appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. Everybody else, hang tight. I will be back in just a minute. And through the magic of editing, I'm back in the studio. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Ron and Kyra were nice enough to spend a couple of hours with me and talk about bugs. And I learned a lot. And as the cliche goes, mostly what I learned was that I need to learn more. And I'm hoping to get one of them or both of them back on the show in the future to keep up this conversation about natural ways to defend our gardens. If you've got any kind of predator or pest question, or even some companion planting questions from the sounds of it, go find the people over at Rincon-Vitova. They're super nice, and they seem real excited to talk about bugs. So again, thank you Ron Whitehurst and Kyra Ankenbrook. Well, mi gente, my people, that's all I've got for you today, man. Now, don't forget, if this show has educated you or entertained you at all, go over to patreon.com, find In My Grow Show, and throw a couple of bucks my way. And that money just helps me put the show together. Helps me pay for hosting fees, makes it easier for me to interview people, and all donation amounts are appreciated. If you don't want to donate through Patreon, go to my website, inmygrow.com, click on the Support the Show tab, and buy a t-shirt. It's going to say inmygrow.com on the front, and on the back it's either going to be Cannabis Saves Lives with the seed logo on it, or it's going to say Grow, Learn, Teach in a nice kind of cool 3D font. Now, if you can't support the show financially, that's alright, don't sweat it. I get it. But do me a favor, subscribe to the website or subscribe to the podcast and tell 3 other people about the show. That's it. Real easy. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to the show for 30 episodes. It means a lot to me. It's a big deal to me. So thank you, I appreciate it. And remember to always grow, learn, and teach. I'm out.
Oh yeah, keep us together. Alright, keep us alright. Oh yeah, hey. Just a little love that we want. Just a little love that we need. Just a little love that we want. Just a little love that we need to keep us alright. Alright, to keep us together. To keep us together. To keep us together. Alright, to keep us together. Alright, keep us forever. Oh yeah, take it down together. Alright, to keep us together. Alright, just a little love that we want. Just a little love that we need. Just a little bit of love. Just a little love that we want. Keep us alright. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Roots rock reggae in the house tonight.